Welcome to a parallel project training APM Project Management qualification podcast based on the APM Body of Knowledge 6th edition. You should be using this in conjunction with our e-learning, study guide and potentially a tutor-led course. For more information, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.
Hello, welcome to another Parallel Project Training podcast. John Bolton's with me. Hello, John.
Hello again.
And we're working through the APM Project Management qualification, formerly known as APMP.
It was easy to say then, wasn't it? It's a bit of a mouthful now. Anyway.
So we're up to section 4.3, point 4 and point 5, which is explain the roles and key responsibilities of a project manager. If you can't do that one, you're in the wrong place, really.
Yes.
Differentiate between the responsibilities of project manager, project sponsor throughout the project life cycle. So there's a hint in terms of answer. And describe the roles, other roles within project management. So let's do the first one. So the roles of a project manager are to
Manage project.
manage the project. I always think deliver the project is the first one.
You don't deliver the project, you deliver the outputs.
Okay. Deliver the outputs of the project. Oh, that's getting semantic, that is.
That's what the team do.
Yes, okay.
I think a lot of it is semantics, to be honest. I think project manager runs the project. I mean, they're responsible for the delivery of what the project's there to do.
Yes, that's right. Successful delivery of the project to the agreed success criteria.
That's right. They are responsible for the plan.
Yes.
They write the plan. They have to make sure the plan's being followed. They manage the people according to the plan.
Manage the stakeholders.
They manage all the stakeholders. They might manage the team and the suppliers.
Communicate with lots of people.
Yeah. I mean, the question we always used to get asked was, well, what do I need a project manager for? Why don't you just, you've got a load of qualified people. Why can't you just get on with it? So, and that's a really good question, actually, because it's quite difficult to answer. Because it comes down to what value does a project manager add? And the value a project manager adds is integration.
Okay.
Is that they make sure that things are done efficiently and effectively, and there's not a lot of wasted time, that the communications are well managed and effective. They make sure that the customer's properly informed, the expectations are properly set, and generally make sure that, part of what a project manager does is administrative, I think. Ideally, project manager's pretty boring really, because you write the plan and you follow the plan. All you do is you make sure the plan's being followed. So
that comes to another point, actually. We haven't touched on the life cycle yet, but do project managers start the concept phase all the way through, in your view, or do they come in part way through?
I don't think there's an answer to that. I think there's always the argument about, do you have the same project manager all the way through?
That's a different one, isn't it?
It's a different question a bit, but do you have I think different people are better at different things.
Yes.
So some project managers are better at
the front end creative bits.
The creative bit.
Yes.
Good at concepts, good at getting, like in bell bins, like the plants,
Yes.
the shapers.
Yes.
And once you get to the end of a project and you're down to, the last little bits, what you really want is you want a detailed person. Last thing you want is a plant.
Yes.
So I think, just the nature of the individual changes.
Yes.
A little bit. So I think it's a bit naive to think that in all cases it's always got to be like this.
Yes.
Because I think, and some projects like, 3 or 4 years long, you've got to accept the fact that some people might not be there for 3 or 4 years for whatever reason.
Yes.
So you've got to kind of allow for people to come and go throughout the life cycle. So if you're going to allow for them, you've got to kind of expect it.
Yes.
So you've got to gear yourself up for it. But otherwise, when it happens, it's a big surprise.
Is there a project manager in the concept phase?
What?
Is there a project manager during the concept phase?
Depends how big it is. Sometimes you get someone like a business analyst, put the business case together.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll be a specialist consultant or something like that.
Yes, okay.
But in reality, regardless of what you call them, they're probably bringing quite a few diverse things together to write a business case.
So they're probably acting as a project manager, even if that's not their job title.
The question you've got to ask is, would you write a project management plan for the concept phase?
And it depends on the
size of it.
Concept study.
I mean, I managed a project to write a business case.
Yes.
It took 9 months or so.
Yes.
And quite a lot of people, when they write, when you're writing a big bid as a supplier,
That's a biz. That's a
you might be.
that's a project as well.
That's looking very like a business case.
Yes,
Because you're telling the client why they should buy from you, what the benefits are, what the costs are, and that's very much like a business case.
yes.
So I think, you know.
So the bid manager,
if you finesse the words a
might
bit,
be a project. Is
a
acting
bid
like
manager's like a project manager
is
for the
acting
bid.
like- yeah.
Do you get a project manager to just write the project management plan? Well, I guess you might,
Yes.
if it's big enough.
Yes.
But I think probably the project manager, you've only really got a project once the project management plan's signed off.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, when's it starting?
I think you've got a project from the beginning. I think creating the business case can be a project in itself.
I know, but that's so then the concept would have four phases because it'd have a concept, it'd have a definition.
Yes, well, that's what it says, doesn't it? Because it says starting. So within the processes within each phase, the starting, planning, executing, and closing processes, those happen within the concept phase. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's not planning. Doesn't start when you get to.
No, I have a different view about processes to you.
Okay.
Because I
Come
think
to that when we talk about processes.
yeah. Because if you've got processes, you must write them down somewhere.
Yes.
So that means you've got a plan for the concept phase.
Yes. Yes, you may do.
Yeah, but then you see, I see it more evolutionary than that. I see you create a core of a plan at the beginning, and you slowly embellish it and slowly refine it.
That's right.
And so your project management plan starts alongside your business case generation.
Yes, that's right.
And then during that process, your business case gets signed off and your project management plan then evolves further.
Yes, that's right.
But your business case still evolves with it.
Yes,
so the
that's
two
right.
documents. So to think
So
of
they're
one.
they're like the Gemini twins.
Yeah,
really.
that's right.
They exist together.
Yeah, I mean, the business case is the why and the project management plan is the what and the how.
Yes, that's right.
And we're diverging a bit from roles here, but it's quite a useful conversation.
Yes,
But
because people quite often ask,
That's the
well,
question.
is there a project manager during that front end part? And I think what the answer is, there's someone fulfilling that role of a project manager.
Yeah.
They may not have the job title
right.
of project
That's
manager.
right. That's right.
If you think about a development, a housing development, then they might be called a development manager.
That's right.
Brilliant. So I think we've done project managers to death a little bit there. Let's move on then and talk about the other roles. So should we do the sponsor first?
Mm-hmm.
So the sponsor. So owns the business case, it says.
Yeah. So, the sponsor is the person to whom the project manager reports for the purposes of the project.
Uh-huh.
So they might be the line manager, might not be.
Yes.
There's pros and cons of that, really. There's quite a discussion of that in the book. Quite often, the sponsors, the sponsor's role is quite a tricky one, actually, because they're the business owner of the project, really.
So they're the person who...
They own the why. Why are we doing it?
Yes.
And they appoint the project manager. I don't get hung up on whether they appoint them or not, but they oversee the activities of the project manager, and the project manager delivers the project, and the sponsor has to keep them honest.
Yes.
So the project manager doesn't drift and start doing the things that interest them, or
Yes.
get dragged in different directions by the client, or
Yes.
by the users.
Yes.
So
they own they're primarily focused on the benefit,
that's right. So
getting the project done,
why are we doing it?
and then for minimum cost in order to maximise the benefit.
That's right. That's right. So the sponsors usually appear of the steering group. I mean, the steering group will be a subset sometimes, or maybe all of the board of a business. So if you've got a big project, then the steering group would contain, let's say, 2 or 3, 4 board directors,
Yes.
and maybe a senior supplier or something like that.
Yes.
And then the project manager would report to some nominated individual within that group who'd be the sponsor.
So you think the sponsor might be the chair of that steering group?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or possibly or not, I don't know. The way you organise all that is really so dependent on the business and how all that works, and then you get into, is it a contracting organisation? In which case, who's the sponsor?
Yes.
Is it the account director, or so you get? It's not an easy one to talk. We're not going to cover that today.
No,
I don't think.
No. I always think the clearest example of a sponsor is a property developer, a housing developer. So if you're building five houses, as a developer, you find a bit of land, you go and get the money. I think that's the thing. They go and get the money. They're the risk taker. You go to the bank, you borrow the money, you get the planning permission. You invest your money in building those houses, then you sell them at the end, and you hope to make a profit.
That's right.
And that's a classic definition of a sponsor, really.
That's right. But I mean,
risk taker.
I'm the governors of a school. We've been building big extensions to the school.
Yes.
And I was the sponsor.
Yes. Well, the governors.
So I spent a couple of years deciding what exactly we were going to do.
Yes.
And why we were going to do it, and identifying what we
benefits.
needed and all the rest of it. I followed it all through the funding. I got everyone appointed, went through all the procurement, and eventually appointed a project manager who's gone and built it.
Yes.
So I'm still involved, or I have been involved, just recently finished it, but I'm still involved on the basis of there are things the project manager problems they come across they can't solve. So they'll come and talk to me and they'll say, John, how do you want to deal with this? Because we could do this or we could do that. And I just have to make sure everyone's been consulted and everyone's on side with that decision. If I leave it to the project manager, then there is a danger that we end up without representation of the steering group. So if the users and the project manager just drum up a solution, someone will come along and say, why did you do that then? And then, all sorts of things kick off. So you just need to make sure that, the sponsor's doing the right job. I'm kind of, if I've got people on the school, one teacher wants, I don't know, one group of people, teaching staff want one thing, and another group of teaching staff want something else. Who decides what they get? Well, I have to sort of arbitrate between them.
Yes.
So facilitate the discussions where we get to a solution. So the project manager knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Can we just unpick that a little bit? Because some people confuse sponsor for client, and they're different. Because the client is the organisation who is client and supplier implies a contractual relationship, which is different. So quite often in a big organisation, you will see both a sponsor and a project manager in the client side. So the sponsor is responsible for the operation and the delivery of the benefit.
Yes, that's right.
And because it's a big project, they then appoint a client-side project manager.
Yes.
Who acts as the interface between the contractors and the client organisation. And there, the client project manager is focused on delivery, not necessarily on the benefit. And I think in your school example, you were doing both, actually. You were the sponsor and the sort of client-side project manager. You were filling both sets of shoes.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
So I think it's quite important when people are writing the exam that they don't mix up the word sponsor with client. Because they may or may not be a client. It just depends on the contract. It's another body of knowledge. It's to do with contractual relationships. The sponsor is the person. Like my property developing example, I might have my own building company, so I may not have to employ a contractor builder, but I may not. But I'm still the prime developer. I'm still the person taking all the risk. Not necessarily focused on delivery of the benefit rather than delivery of the project. So when you write the exam, you just need to be a bit careful not to, in your head, superimpose the two words client and sponsor, because they're slightly different, really.
But the model doesn't include client.
No, I know, but I see it quite a lot in the way answers people write. They use the word.
Well, I just ignore the word client.
What do you mean?
I don't even mention client.
Yes, I know, but people use the word client in their answers to the questions.
Yes, but if you look at the model, or look at the diagram, it says
client.
Sponsor, project manager, users. Yes,
actually, because the client is down here. You've got suppliers down here, so the project manager in this box is
the client.
Is the client.
That's right.
So, so the sponsor is not the client. The sponsor is the person who receives the benefit, and that may or may not be the person who you see as your. It's probably somebody higher up the food chain.
Interesting discussion.
Yes.
Do we move on?
Pardon? Yes. So we've done suppliers, really.
Suppliers are the people who do stuff.
Suppliers are the people who do stuff through a contract, and team members are employees who do stuff.
Well, the difference between suppliers and team is the suppliers are operating through a contract. So the suppliers generally have a project manager.
Yes.
In charge of their own resources.
Yes. Whereas team members...
You manage a group of people rather than an individual. Whereas team members, you manage individuals.
Yes.
So that arrow between the project manager and the team it represents things like leadership and motivation and things like that, rather than contract management and procurement. And the users are the people, the recipients of the benefit. They decide what they want. They specify what they want. they recommend acceptance to the sponsor, and then they operate it.
Yes. And then their decisions are arbitrated by the sponsor.
That's right. So the sponsor has to make a decision about which of the users get what they want, or if there's a conflict.
Who would be the users for an airport?
The airlines.
The airlines. Yeah.
The airlines and potentially cab companies.
Yes.
Potentially the shops in the terminal buildings. Potentially people like the Highways Agency, I suppose.
So the people who use the asset that's built to deliver the service.
I always find people get confused between stakeholders and users. Because I think, if you, especially in the public sector, they talk about stakeholders.
Yes.
Our primary stakeholder.
Yes. Okay.
And to me, the difference between a user and a stakeholder, you probably disagree with this, but the difference between a user and a stakeholder is the user is the person that's giving something up to get something.
Yes.
Whereas stakeholders just interested.
Yes, that's right.
So a user. So if someone comes along and says, I'm going to build a great big road at the bottom of your garden.
Yes.
And I say, well, I don't like that. At
Yes.
the moment, I'm just a stakeholder.
Yes.
And I have a view.
Yes.
Now, if they then say, well, okay, if we put a 25-foot fence up and we move the line of the road 100 metres to the left, then I become a user because they've now got to build that fence for me. And what I'm giving up is my agreement. That turns me from a stakeholder, someone's just interested, into someone that's expecting to get something.
Okay.
I'm giving it up. I'm not giving them money, but I'm giving them my agreement, my permission.
Okay.
And that turns me from just someone who's interested, generally
Yes,
interested.
okay.
Your project is doing
So I
something
then have
for me.
acceptance.
That's
I have
right.
a right of acceptance, which is
That's
why
right.
when they're building roads, they don't do that because
That's right.
it would be a nightmare because
That's
the
right.
acceptance would be you'd
That's
have to
right.
go all the. That's why they get Transport and Work Acts, which basically says you are getting this
That's
road.
right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
You don't have an input.
That's
into
right.
the
That's right. So if you're building a school and someone says, "Well, I want a caretaker's office,"
Yes.
then my caretaker, and I agree to
Is
build
a
a
user.
caretaker's office. My caretaker's no longer a stakeholder; he's now a user.
Yes, that's right.
Because if I don't give him he's going to kick up a fuss.
That's right.
And
So users,
and
critically-
rightly so. Yeah.
So users critically are consulted about the requirements and have sign off
That's
at
right.
the end.
That's right. That's right.
And if you're
That's
not satisfied with users, potentially they could refuse to
That's right.
accept
That's
the
right.
project
That's
back.
right. They're a recipient of the products.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that's in my airport example. I always think the baggage handlers and the check-in crews and the airlines are the users
Yeah.
because they have acceptance. They work in.
Yeah.
They accept the requirements. And
That's right.
passengers are end users. They don't. No one consults you about what.
Well, I think it's different. I think if you've got a stakeholder group,
Yes.
like on a railway,
Yes.
so Crossrail, who's the users?
The people who run the trains,
The train
and the
operating
signalling
companies,
people,
the
and
TOCs,
the power.
the ATOCs,
Yes.
So people say, well, what about the travelling passengers? Well,
Yes.
no, they're stakeholders.
stakeholders.
Individually, they're stakeholders.
Yes.
But as soon as you get a rail user group,
They're still a stakeholder though.
they're still a stakeholder until they say, well, you get our positive support if you do this
okay.
for us.
Unless
you know?
they've got statutory approval or
Yeah,
something.
okay.
So
I
I
take
think
the point,
users,
but yeah.
someone who you have to get a sign off at the end,
Yeah. Yeah.
or their boss has to sign off at
that's
the
right.
end.
But if I'm the train operating company and I'm deciding what train I use,
Yes.
then my users may well be my rail users group.
Yes. Okay.
So it just depends what you're doing.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So users set the requirements and sign off the requirements.
That's right.
And have,
That's right.
have a
That's
role
right.
in acceptance.
They give something up
whereas stakeholders
and
are
expect
interested
to get something as a consequence.
whereas stakeholders are interested parties
That's right.
who don't necessarily have an input.
So importantly, when you talk about roles and responsibilities in the exam, don't talk about stakeholders
Don't talk about
because they don't
stakeholders,
have a role or responsibility.
Don't talk about clients.
Don't talk about clients.
Or you can talk about suppliers.
You can talk about suppliers, teams, project managers, users, sponsors, or steering group.
Correct.
And you could, if you want to, talk about project offices.
Yes.
But we're not going to cover that now.
No, that's the next one. Good. We weaved our way through that quite well, really, because it's it can get mightily complicated.
It looks dead simple,
Yes, but
but
in real,
it's actually quite tricky.
Yes.
And you need clarity. You need to just have that kind of clear view.
yes,
Sponsors, benefits, and why are we doing it? Project managers,
Delivery.
the delivery, and what and how are we doing it?
Yes.
Users are the recipients of what you're going to get, and they
they're
define
going
what
to
they want.
use what you built.
That's right.
Basically.
That's right. And who appoints sponsors and all that stuff is generally bound up in the governance, and we'll cover that later.
Or the method. Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good. Thank you, John.
Cheers, mate.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast and found it informative. To order a study guide, e-learning, or a tutor-led course to go with this podcast, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.